The stagecoach door swung open, and Evelyn Harper stepped into Red Hollow with mud on her boots and $23 to her name. Behind her, a dead husband's debts, creditors who'd stripped her bare, and a scandal that made sure no respectable door would ever open again. Ahead, a ranch job so brutal no man had lasted 3 months. She was 43, alone, and 1 week from starving. This wasn't a fresh start. It was a last chance. And if you're wondering whether she made it, stay until the end. Drop a like and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The wind hit her face the moment she stepped down from the stagecoach, dry and sharp as broken glass. Evelyn Harper stood on the edge of Red Hollow's main street, if you could call it that, a strip of rutted dirt flanked by wooden buildings that looked like they'd been thrown together in a hurry and left to rot. The air smelled of manure, wood smoke, and something she couldn't name. Desperation, maybe. She gripped the handle of her carpet bag with both hands, feeling the weight of everything she owned pressing against her palm. 2 dresses, a change of underclothes, a hairbrush with half its bristles missing, a small photograph she should have burned but hadn't. That was it. That was all she had left after Richard died, and the creditors came like vultures. A man with a tobacco-stained beard leaned against a post outside the saloon, watching her. He spat into the dirt. "You lost, lady." Evelyn straightened her shoulders. "I'm looking for Iron Ridge Ranch." He laughed, a wet, ugly sound. "You're the one answering the ad?" "I am." "Hell." He shook his head. "Cole Mercer's going to eat you alive." She didn't respond. She'd learned in the past 6 months that silence was often the best weapon. Let them think what they wanted. She'd stopped caring about opinions the day she'd stood in her parlor and watched strangers auction off her furniture. The man jerked his thumb toward the end of the street. "Livery's that way. Tell Ben you need a ride out to Iron Ridge. He'll take you. Probably charge you double, but he'll take you." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." She walked past him, keeping her chin up, her steps measured. The mud sucked at her boots, good leather once, now cracked and splitting at the seams. She could feel eyes on her from every doorway, every window. A woman alone. A woman dressed too fine for this place, even in a travel-stained dress that had seen better days. A woman who didn't belong. Let them look. The livery smelled like hay and horse piss. A young man, Ben, she assumed, looked up from mucking out a stall. He couldn't have been more than 19, all gangly limbs and sunburned nose. "Help you, ma'am?" "I need transportation to Iron Ridge Ranch." His eyebrows shot up. "You sure about that?" "Quite sure." "That's 8 miles out. Cost you $2. She didn't have $2 to spare, but she nodded. "That's fine." He studied her for a long moment, then shrugged. "Your funeral." "Give me 20 minutes." While he hitched up a wagon, Evelyn sat on a bench outside and watched Red Hollow go about its business. A freight wagon rumbled past, loaded with lumber. 2 cowboys rode by, laughing about something. A woman in a faded calico dress hurried across the street with a basket over her arm, not meeting anyone's eyes. This was the West. The real West, not the romanticized version she'd read about in Harper's Weekly. This was dirt and sweat and survival. No drawing rooms, no calling cards, no pretense. She'd grown up in Boston, married Richard Harper when she was 19. A good match, everyone said. He was 15 years older, established, respectable. They had a house on Beacon Hill. She hosted dinners. She did charity work. She played the piano on Sunday afternoons. And then Richard died of a stroke, and she discovered he'd been gambling for years. The house was mortgaged 3 times over. The accounts were empty. The debts were staggering. His brother had offered to help, for a price. She still remembered his hand on her waist, his breath on her neck. "You don't have many options, Evelyn." She'd walked out that same night with whatever she could carry. A week later, she'd seen the advertisement in a newspaper someone had left on a train station bench. Cook wanted. Remote ranch. Hard work. Room and board. Inquire Iron Ridge Ranch, Red Hollow, Wyoming Territory. No mention of salary, no details, just those few stark lines. She'd written immediately. The response had come fast. "Come if you can start right away. Bring nothing you can't carry." So here she was. "Ready, ma'am." Ben had brought the wagon around, a rickety thing that looked like it might fall apart on the first bump. She climbed up beside him, settling her bag on her lap. They rode in silence for the first mile. The town fell away behind them, replaced by empty grassland that stretched to the horizon. The sky was enormous, bigger than any sky she'd ever seen, and the sun beat down with relentless intensity. "You really going to work at Iron Ridge?" Ben finally asked. "That's the plan." Last cook lasted 2 weeks. "What happened to him?" "Her. She ran off in the middle of the night, left a note saying she'd rather starve than deal with Cole Mercer another day." Evelyn didn't respond. "The one before that quit after 4 days, and the one before that, well, he got into a fight with one of the hands and got his jaw broke." "I appreciate the warning." Ben glanced at her. "No offense, ma'am, but you don't look like you've done much ranch cooking." "I haven't." "Then why?" "Because I need the job." He fell silent again. The wagon creaked and bounced over the rough trail. Evelyn's teeth rattled. Her spine ached. She'd been traveling for 3 weeks, train, stagecoach, now this, every mile taking her further from everything she'd known. After another hour, buildings appeared on the horizon. Not a town, a ranch. Sprawling and rough, built from logs and necessity. A big house, a barn, corrals, outbuildings scattered like dice. Cattle dotted the hillsides in the distance. "That's Iron Ridge," Ben said. It looked hard, unforgiving. Exactly what she'd expected. As they pulled into the yard, men stopped what they were doing to stare. A cowboy mending a fence, another leading a horse from the barn, a third dumping water from a bucket. All of them watching her with various degrees of surprise and skepticism. The front door of the main house opened and a man stepped out. Evelyn knew immediately this was Cole Mercer. He was tall, broad-shouldered, maybe 40, dark hair going gray at the temples, a face that looked like it had been carved from stone and left out in the weather too long. He wore work clothes, canvas pants, a chambray shirt, boots caked with mud. Everything about him said hard work and harder living. He looked at her the way a man might look at a horse he wasn't sure was worth buying. Ben pulled the wagon to a stop. "Got your new cook, Mr. Mercer." Cole Mercer's eyes didn't leave Evelyn's face. "You the one who wrote the letter?" "I am, Evelyn Harper." "Get down." It wasn't quite rude, but it wasn't polite either. Evelyn climbed down from the wagon, her legs stiff from the ride. She stood in the dusty yard with her carpet bag and met his gaze without flinching. He walked around her slowly, like she was livestock at auction. She felt her temper rise but kept it locked down. "You ever cooked for 30 men?" he asked. "No." "You ever cooked on a wood stove?" "No." "You know how to butcher a chicken?" "No." He stopped in front of her. "What exactly can you do, Mrs. Harper?" "Learn fast." One of the cowboys snickered. Cole shot him a look that shut him up instantly. "This isn't Boston," Cole said. "I'm aware. We start breakfast at 4:30, dinner at noon, supper at 6. You'll be cooking for 25 to 30 men, depending on the day. You'll do your own washing up. You'll keep the kitchen clean. You'll order supplies. You'll bake bread twice a week. You screw up, and these men will let you know, loudly." "I understand." "I'm giving you 1 week," he said. 7 days. You make it that long, we'll talk about keeping you on. You don't, and Ben here will take you back to town. Fair? It wasn't fair, it was barely a chance, but it was more than she had yesterday. Fair. He nodded once. Bunkhouse is behind the barn. You'll have the small room off the kitchen. Stow your gear and get started. The men expect supper in 3 hours. Then he turned and walked away, dismissing her without another word. Ben gave her an apologetic look. Good luck, ma'am. She paid him the $2, watched him drive away, and stood alone in the yard with the weight of 30 pairs of eyes on her back. One of the cowboys, older, with a gray mustache, approached. He had kind eyes, at least. Name's Tom, he said. I'm the foreman. Come on, I'll show you the kitchen. She followed him across the yard and into the main house. It was bigger than she'd expected, but rough. Bare wood floors, simple furniture, everything built for function rather than comfort. The kitchen was at the back, a large room with a massive wood stove, a long work table, open shelves packed with supplies, and a window that looked out over the corrals. Last cook left it pretty clean, Tom said. Stove's tricky, burns hot on the left side, cool on the right. Water pumps outside, pantries through there. You need anything, you let me know. Thank you. He hesitated. Look, ma'am, Cole's not as bad as he seems. He's had a rough couple of years. Lost his wife in childbirth. Baby, too. This place is all he's got, and he runs it hard. Don't take it personal. Evelyn set down her bag. I won't. Tom nodded and left her alone. She stood in the middle of the kitchen, looking around. The stove was enormous and intimidating. She had no idea what to cook. She'd spent 20 years managing a household, but she'd never actually done the cooking. That had been the job of their cook, Mrs. Patterson. But Mrs. Patterson wasn't here. No one was here. Just Evelyn and 3 hours until 30 hungry men expected to be fed. She took a deep breath, rolled up her sleeves, and got to work. The pantry held basics: flour, cornmeal, lard, salt pork, dried beans, canned tomatoes, potatoes, onions. In the cold cellar, she found eggs, butter, a ham. Not fancy, but enough. She'd watched Mrs. Patterson make biscuits 100 times. She could do this. She built a fire in the stove, trying to remember everything she'd seen. The wood caught slowly, smoking before it flared. She adjusted the damper, hoping she was doing it right. While it heated, she started on the biscuits: flour, lard, salt, baking powder, buttermilk. Her hands were clumsy at first, but muscle memory kicked in. Cut the fat into the flour. Don't overwork the dough. Pat it out, cut rounds, place them in the pan. The stove was roaring now, heat blasting from it like a forge. She slid the biscuits in, then started on the rest. She fried the salt pork, made gravy from the drippings, boiled potatoes, opened cans of beans. It wasn't elegant. It probably wasn't even good. But it was food. By the time the dinner bell rang, someone outside clanging an iron triangle, she had everything on the table: biscuits, gravy, pork, beans, potatoes. She'd set out plates and forks, filled pitchers with water. Then she stepped back and waited. The men came in like a stampede, boots thundering, voices loud, chairs scraping. They filled the long table, grabbing food without ceremony, piling their plates high. Cole Mercer sat at the head. He took a biscuit, broke it open, studied it. Then he took a bite. Evelyn held her breath. He chewed slowly, swallowed, reached for the gravy. Around the table, the men were eating. Some were shoveling food in like they hadn't eaten in days. Others were eating more slowly, cautiously. A few were exchanging glances. Finally, Tom spoke up. Biscuits are good, ma'am. A murmur of agreement rippled around the table. Evelyn felt something loosen in her chest. Not triumph, she wasn't naive enough for that. But relief. Small, tentative relief. Cole didn't say anything. He just kept eating, his face unreadable. When the meal was over, the men filed out. Most of them nodded at her or muttered thanks. One, a young cowboy with red hair, grinned. Better than the last cook, that's for damn sure. Cole was the last to leave. He paused in the doorway. You burned the beans, he said. I know. Don't burn them tomorrow. I won't. He left. Evelyn stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by dirty dishes and the smell of wood smoke and fried pork. Her back ached, her feet hurt, her hands were raw from scrubbing potatoes. But she'd done it. 1 meal down, 6 days and 21 meals to go. She washed the dishes by hand, pumping water from the outside well and heating it on the stove. It took over an hour. By the time she finished, it was nearly dark. Her room was small, barely big enough for a narrow bed, a chair, and a washstand. But it had a door that locked and a window that let in the night air. After 6 months of sleeping in train stations and boarding houses, it felt like a palace. She sat on the bed and unlaced her boots. Her feet were blistered. Tomorrow they'd be worse. Through the wall, she could hear the low rumble of men's voices from the dining room. Someone laughed. Someone else told him to shut up. This was her life now. This kitchen. These men. This harsh, unforgiving place. She lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. She thought about Boston, about her old life, about Richard and the lies he'd told and the mess he'd left behind. She thought about his brother's hand on her waist. She thought about the letter she'd written to her sister, the one her sister had never answered. She thought about all the doors that had closed, one by one, until there was only this one left. Red Hollow, Iron Ridge Ranch, Cole Mercer and his burned beans. She could still leave. Ben would come get her if she asked. She could go back to town, try to find something else. But she wouldn't. She was done running. Tomorrow she'd get up before dawn and make breakfast for 30 men. She'd burned something else probably, and Cole Mercer would tell her so in that flat, hard voice. She'd wash more dishes and pump more water, and her hands would bleed and her back would scream, but she'd do it. Because this was her last chance. And Evelyn Harper didn't waste chances. Shut. The next morning came fast and dark. She woke to the sound of roosters and rolled out of bed in the cold pre-dawn air. Her whole body protested. She ignored it. In the kitchen, she built the fire and started coffee, strong and black, the way she'd heard cowboys liked it. Then she started on breakfast: eggs, bacon, fried potatoes, more biscuits. The men arrived at 4:30 sharp, hungry and grumpy. They ate fast and left faster, heading out to start their work. Cole said nothing, just ate and left. That became the rhythm of her days. Wake, cook, clean, cook, clean, cook, clean, sleep. Her hands blistered, then calloused. Her back stopped screaming and settled into a dull, constant ache. She learned the stove's moods, learned which pots were reliable and which had hot spots, learned how much salt these men liked and how much coffee they could drink. She burned things. She undercooked things. She ran out of biscuits and had to make more mid-meal while 25 angry cowboys waited. But she didn't quit. On the third day, one of the cowboys, a lean, scar-faced man named Dutch, asked for seconds on her stew. On the fourth day, Tom brought her a box of fresh vegetables from town without being asked. On the fifth day, the red-haired kid whose name was Jimmy told her she made the best apple pie he'd ever had. She hadn't made apple pie. She'd made a cobbler from canned apples and hope. But she didn't correct him. Cole still said nothing, just ate, watched her with those hard, unreadable eyes. Left. On the sixth night, she was washing dishes when Tom came into the kitchen. "You're gonna make it," he said. "Maybe." "No, maybe about it. I've seen 3 cooks come through here in 6 months. You're different." "How?" "You don't complain. You don't make excuses. You just keep going." He paused. "That's what this place needs, people who keep going." After he left, Evelyn stood at the sink with her hands in the cooling dishwater and let herself feel something like hope. Just a little. On the morning of the 7th day, she got up and made breakfast the same as always. The men came in, ate, left. Cole was the last to go. He stopped at the door. "You made it a week," he said. "I did." "You want to stay?" Her heart pounded. "Yes." He nodded. "Wages are $30 a month, plus room and board. You get Sundays off after breakfast. Tom handles the supply orders, but you tell him what you need. Any problems, you come to me." "Thank you." He turned to go, then stopped. "And Mrs. Harper?" "Yes?" "The biscuits this morning were good." Then he was gone. Evelyn stood in the kitchen, alone, and felt tears sting her eyes. She blinked them back fast. 7 days. She'd made it 7 days. And now she had a job. A real job. $30 a month. A room. A purpose. It wasn't much, but it was hers. She wiped her hands on her apron and got back to work. Because out here, survival wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, day after day, and refusing to break. And Evelyn Harper was done breaking. The second week started with a test she hadn't seen coming. Evelyn was elbow-deep in bread dough when Tom walked into the kitchen, hat in hand, looking uncomfortable. "Mrs. Harper, we got a problem." She didn't stop kneading. "What kind of problem?" "Cole's bringing in 12 extra men tomorrow. Crew from the North Pasture. They'll be here for meals all week." Her hands stilled. 12 extra? That's 42 men." "Yes, ma'am." "Starting tomorrow?" "Yes, ma'am." She looked at the dough under her palms, doing the math in her head. 42 men meant double the biscuits, double the coffee, double everything. The stove could barely handle 30. Tom shifted his weight. "If you need to, if it's too much, I can tell Cole." "No." She went back to kneading, harder this time. "I'll manage." "You sure?" "I'm sure. Tell Mr. Mercer his men will be fed." Tom left looking relieved. Evelyn finished the bread and stood there staring at her supplies, recalculating everything she knew. She'd need to start earlier, work faster, waste nothing. She could do this. She had to. That night she barely slept, running through meal plans in her head. When the alarm clock rattled at 3:30 in the morning, she was already awake. The kitchen was freezing, her breath visible in the dark. She lit the lamps with shaking fingers, got the fire going, started the coffee. By 4 o'clock, she had bacon sizzling in 3 pans, eggs waiting to be cracked, potatoes frying in lard. The stove was an inferno, heat rolling off it in waves that made her face flush and her back sweat. The men came in at 4:30 like always, but this time they kept coming. The room filled past capacity, cowboys standing along the walls, sitting on windowsills, eating off their laps. The noise was deafening. Evelyn worked like a machine. Crack eggs, flip bacon, pull biscuits from the oven, slide in new ones, pour coffee, refill platters. Her hands moved without thought, driven by pure necessity. "More biscuits," someone yelled. "Coffee's out." "Anyone got salt?" She couldn't keep up. The stove was too hot on one side, too cool on the other. She burned a pan of eggs and had to scrape them into the scrap bucket. A cowboy bumped her elbow and she spilled coffee grounds across the counter. "Sorry, ma'am." "It's fine." She swept them into her palm, dumped them in the pot anyway. No time to waste. Cole sat at the head of the table, watching, always watching. His face gave away nothing. By the time the last man finished eating and filed out, Evelyn was shaking with exhaustion. It was barely 6 in the morning. She had 6 hours until dinner. She looked at the disaster zone that was her kitchen, every pot dirty, every surface sticky, flour on the floor, grease splattered on the walls. "You made it." She turned. Cole was standing in the doorway. She hadn't heard him come back. "Barely," she said. "Barely counts." He studied the mess. "You got help with cleanup if you need it." "I don't need help." "Suit yourself." He started to leave, then stopped. "The eggs were burned." "I know." "Don't burn them tomorrow." "I won't." After he left, she stood there for a long moment, staring at nothing. Then she tied her apron tighter and started washing dishes. It took 3 hours to get the kitchen clean. By the time she started on dinner prep, her back was screaming and her fingers were raw from lye soap. But she kept moving because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant feeling how much everything hurt. Dinner was beef stew, cornbread, canned peaches. She managed to get it all on the table at noon without burning anything. Small victory. The men ate fast and left faster, heading back to work. Cole said nothing, just ate and left. That became the pattern. Up at 3:30. Breakfast for 42, clean. Dinner at noon, clean. Supper at 6, clean. Collapse into bed at 9 and do it again. On the 3rd day, she ran out of flour mid-breakfast and had to improvise with cornmeal pancakes. The men didn't complain, but she saw the looks. On the 4th day, the bread didn't rise right and came out dense as bricks. Dutch actually knocked on one and grinned. "Could use this for the foundation on the new barn." "Shut up, Dutch," Tom said mildly. But Dutch was already passing the brick bread around, and the younger cowboys were laughing, and Evelyn felt her face burn with humiliation. "It's still food," she said, voice tight. Dutch looked up, and something in his face shifted. "Hey, I was just kidding, ma'am. Bread's fine. I've had worse." "No, you haven't." "Sure I have. You should have tasted what the army fed us during the war. This is a damn feast compared to that." The other men murmured agreement. The moment passed. Evelyn went back to the kitchen and leaned against the counter, breathing hard. She wasn't going to cry. She'd given up crying 6 months ago, but it was close. That afternoon, Tom found her in the pantry taking inventory. "You doing all right, ma'am?" "Fine." "You don't look fine." She turned to face him. "I'm managing." "You're running yourself into the ground." He held up a hand before she could argue. "I'm not saying you can't handle it. I'm saying you don't have to handle it alone. Let me send one of the boys to help with cleanup, or prep, something." "Mr. Mercer hired me to cook." "Mr. Mercer hired you to keep his men fed. He didn't hire you to kill yourself doing it." Tom's voice was gentle but firm. "There's no shame in accepting help." Evelyn wanted to argue. Pride demanded it. But pride didn't wash dishes or peel potatoes or scrub pots at midnight when her hands were bleeding. "All right," she said quietly. "All right? Send someone. After supper, for cleanup." Tom smiled. "I'll send Jimmy. Kid's useless with a rope, but he can wash dishes just fine." That night, after the men had eaten and gone, Jimmy appeared in the kitchen doorway looking nervous. "Mr. Tom said you needed help, ma'am." "I do." "You know how to wash dishes?" "Yes, ma'am." "Then get to work." They worked in silence for a while, Jimmy at the sink and Evelyn putting away the clean pots. Finally, Jimmy spoke up. My ma used to cook for a hotel in Denver. She said the secret to feeding a crowd was making sure you enjoyed at least one thing on the menu yourself. Said if you hated everything you cooked, everyone eating it would taste it. Evelyn paused, holding a pot. Did she? Did she what? Enjoy what she cooked? Jimmy grinned. She loved her own biscuits. Made them every morning, even on her day off. Said they were the only perfect thing in an imperfect world. Where is she now? The grin faded. Died of pneumonia 5 years back. I'm sorry. Me too. He scrubbed at a stubborn pot. But I remember those biscuits. I think that's what she wanted, to be remembered for something good. After he left, Evelyn stood in the quiet kitchen and thought about biscuits. About her own mother's terrible pot roast that she'd made every Sunday anyway. About Mrs. Patterson's lemon cake that Richard had always requested for his birthday. About what she wanted to be remembered for if she died out here in the middle of nowhere. The next morning, she made the biscuits with extra care, mixed the dough gently, rolled it out with a lighter touch, made sure the oven temperature was just right. When the men bit into them, she saw it, that moment of surprise, of pleasure. Even Cole paused mid-bite. Dutch actually closed his eyes. Now, that's a biscuit. Something loosened in Evelyn's chest. Not pride exactly, more like connection. She'd made something these hard, rough men enjoyed, something that made them stop, just for a second, and feel something besides tired or hungry or sore. It was a small thing, but out here, small things mattered. After breakfast, Cole walked past her carrying his saddle. Biscuits were good, he said without stopping. Thank you. He was already gone, but Evelyn stood there smiling at nothing. The extra crew left on Saturday, and Sunday morning Evelyn woke to the strange luxury of only 30 men for breakfast. It felt easy by comparison. After the meal, Tom reminded her it was her day off. Go to town if you want. Ben runs the wagon in on Sundays. Or just rest. You earned it. She chose rest. She slept until 9, then sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and watched the ranch wake up slowly around her. Most of the men had ridden out, leaving the place quiet except for the chickens and the occasional horse snort from the barn. Cole was working in the corral, training a young horse. She watched him move, patient, firm, never harsh. The horse was skittish, but Cole just kept at it, quiet and persistent. Eventually the horse settled, accepting the halter. He saw her watching and nodded once. She nodded back. They didn't speak. Didn't need to. That afternoon, she baked bread for the week and made a batch of ginger cookies from a recipe she half remembered from childhood. When the men came in for supper, she put the cookies out on a plate without comment. They were gone in 5 minutes. You got more of those? Dutch asked hopefully. Not tonight. Tomorrow? Maybe, he grinned. I'll hold you to that. After supper, she was wiping down the stove when Cole came back into the kitchen. She tensed, waiting for criticism, waiting for him to find something wrong. Instead, he said, The men are settling down. Settling down? Fewer fights, less complaining, they're working better. He paused. A good meal matters more than most people think. I'm just cooking food. You're doing more than that. He met her eyes. You're making this place feel less like a work camp and more like a home. That's not nothing. Before she could respond, he was gone. Evelyn stood there in the empty kitchen, his words echoing in her head. A home. She'd lost her home 6 months ago, lost everything that came with it, security, status, identity. She'd spent so long thinking of herself as a refugee, a survivor, someone just barely hanging on. But maybe she could be something else. Maybe she could be someone who built instead of someone who just endured. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Monday morning came hard and fast. One of the horses had gotten into the grain and 3 cowboys had to stay behind to deal with the colic. That meant lunch for 27 instead of 30, but also meant irritated, worried men who snapped at each other and ate in tense silence. Evelyn set out the food and retreated to the kitchen, giving them space. Afterward, Tom came to find her. Horse is gonna make it, he said. But it was close. I'm glad. Yeah, me too. He hesitated. Can I ask you something? Of course. How come you never ask questions? About us, about Cole, about this place? Evelyn thought about that. Everyone's got their reasons for being where they are. I figure if someone wants me to know their story, they'll tell me. That's simple? That's simple, Tom smiled. You're good people, Mrs. Harper. I'm just trying to survive. Yeah, but you're doing it with grace. That's rarer than you think. Over the next few days, the men started talking to her, not just practical things like asking for more coffee or complaining about the salt. Real conversation. Dutch told her about the ranch he'd owned in Texas before the war took everything. Jimmy talked about his dream of saving enough to buy land of his own. A quiet cowboy named Frank mentioned his sister back east, who sent him letters every month. She listened. That was all. Just listened and nodded and didn't judge. In return, they started helping without being asked. Someone would carry in firewood. Someone else would haul the heavy water buckets. Dutch started bringing her wild turkey and rabbit from his hunting trips. Figured you could use some fresh meat, he'd say gruffly. She turned the game into stews and roasts that made the men go back for seconds. The ranch was changing around her, softening somehow. Men laughed more, argued less. Tom started bringing his harmonica to the dining room after supper, playing old songs while the men sat around and talked. Evelyn would listen from the kitchen while she cleaned, and sometimes she'd catch herself humming along. Cole never joined the after-dinner gatherings. He'd eat, nod his thanks, and disappear into his office or out to check the stock. He was always working, always distant, but sometimes she'd feel his eyes on her. She'd turn and find him watching from a doorway or through a window, that unreadable expression on his face. It should have made her uncomfortable. It didn't. One evening, a week and a half after the extra crew had left, a cowboy named Sam came into the kitchen holding his hand wrapped in a bloody rag. "Cut myself on some wire," he said, pale under his tan. "Don't suppose you got any bandages?" Evelyn was at his side immediately, unwrapping the makeshift bandage. The cut was deep, running across his palm, still bleeding freely. "Sit down," she ordered. "It's not that bad. Sit. Down." He sat. She grabbed clean towels, whiskey from the medicinal supply, needle and thread. Her hands moved with confidence she didn't know she possessed, cleaning the wound, assessing the damage. "This needs stitches," she said. Sam went white. "You know how to do that? I watched a doctor sew up my husband's head once after he fell off a horse." She threaded the needle. "Hold still." "Maybe I should just hold still." She poured whiskey over the cut. Sam hissed. "Sorry, this is going to hurt worse." She'd never done this before, never thought she could. But Sam was bleeding and there was no doctor for 20 miles and someone had to do something. So she did it. The first stitch was clumsy. The second was better. By the fifth, her hands were steady. Sam gritted his teeth and didn't make a sound except for sharp breaths through his nose. When she finished, she wrapped the hand in clean bandages and sat back. "Done." Sam looked at his hand, then at her. "Ma'am, you might have missed your calling." "I highly doubt that." But she felt something settle inside her, a sense of capability she'd been missing for months. She could do hard things. She could do things she'd never done before. She could be useful in ways she'd never imagined. Cole appeared in the doorway. "What happened?" "Sam cut his hand," Evelyn said. "I stitched it." Cole looked at the neat bandage, then at Evelyn. Something shifted in his expression, surprise maybe, or respect. "Good work," he said simply. After Sam left with instructions to keep it clean and come back tomorrow, Cole lingered in the kitchen. "Where'd you learn that?" he asked. "I didn't. I just did it. You just—" He stopped, shook his head. "Most people would have panicked. Panicking doesn't help anyone." "No, it doesn't." He studied her for a long moment. "You're tougher than you look, Mrs. Harper." "I've had to be." He nodded slowly, like she'd confirmed something he'd suspected. Then, without another word, he left. Evelyn cleaned up the blood and put away the medical supplies, her hands only shaking once it was all over. That night, lying in bed, she stared at the ceiling and thought about the past month. The burned beans and brick bread and bleeding hands, the pre-dawn mornings and midnight cleanups, the slow, grudging acceptance from men who'd expected her to fail. She thought about Cole Mercer's rare praise and Tom's kindness, and Jimmy's stories about his mother's biscuits. She thought about home, not the one she'd lost, but the one she might be building here, one meal at a time. The next morning, she got up before dawn and made the best biscuits of her life, because she'd learned something important out here in the harsh Wyoming territory. Surviving wasn't about being perfect, It wasn't about never making mistakes, or never burning the beans, or never having your bread come out like bricks. It was about getting up every morning and trying again. About accepting help when you needed it and giving it when you could. About finding small moments of grace in a hard world and holding on to them like lifelines. It was about becoming someone new, not because you wanted to, but because you had to. And Evelyn Harper was finally becoming someone she could respect. The weeks rolled on like the prairie wind, relentless, wearing, but somehow cleansing. October slid into November. The air turned sharp. The men started wearing heavier coats, and Evelyn kept the stove burning hotter to fight the cold creeping through the walls. She'd been at Iron Ridge for 6 weeks when the first real trouble hit. It started with a missing supply order. Tom came into the kitchen looking frustrated. Sugar didn't come in. Neither did the coffee. Ben said there was some confusion at the mercantile. Evelyn wiped her hands on her apron. How much do we have left? Maybe 3 days' worth of sugar? Coffee runs out tomorrow. Cowboys without coffee were like bears without honey, dangerous and unpredictable. I'll make it work, she said. You sure? No, but I'll do it anyway. The next morning, she made the coffee stretch by brewing it weaker and adding chicory. The men noticed immediately. This coffee tastes like dirt, one of them complained. Then don't drink it, Dutch said sharply. I'm just saying Mrs. Harper's doing the best she can with what she's got. So shut your mouth and drink your dirt coffee. The complainer shut up, but Evelyn saw the resentment in his eyes, and in others. They'd gotten used to good food, and now supplies were running thin. She made breakfast without sugar, using molasses instead. It wasn't the same. Lunch was beans and cornbread, nothing fancy. Dinner was salt pork and potatoes, stretched as far as they'd go. By the third day, the tension in the dining room was thick enough to cut. Cole finally spoke up. Supply wagon's coming tomorrow. Everyone just needs to settle down. Easy for you to say, someone muttered. Cole's head turned sharply. You got something to say. Speak up. Silence. That's what I thought. But when the men filed out, Evelyn saw Cole's jaw was tight with anger. That night, he came into the kitchen while she was cleaning up. They're getting restless, he said without preamble. I know. It's not your fault. Feels like it. It's not. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Running a ranch means dealing with problems. Supply problems. Weather problems. People problems. You can't control everything. I just want to do my job. You are doing your job. Better than anyone has in years. He paused. Don't let a few ungrateful idiots make you think otherwise. Something warm bloomed in Evelyn's chest. Thank you. He nodded and left her alone with her thoughts. The supply wagon came the next day, and Evelyn went back to making proper meals. The tension eased. The men settled back into their routines. But something had shifted between her and Cole. He started staying after meals sometimes, drinking coffee at the table while she cleaned. They didn't talk much. Cole wasn't a man who wasted words. But the silence was comfortable. One evening, he surprised her. My wife used to hate this place, he said suddenly. Evelyn stopped wiping the counter. She was from San Francisco. Met her when I was buying stock. She thought ranch life would be romantic. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. It wasn't. She was miserable from the day we got here until the day she died. I'm sorry. Don't be. I knew before we got married that this wasn't her kind of life. I thought love would be enough. He stared into his coffee cup. Turns out, it wasn't. Evelyn didn't know what to say, so she just listened. She died trying to give me a son, her and the baby both. His voice was flat, emotionless. Doctor said it was complications. I say it was this place. It kills things that don't belong here. You're still here, Evelyn said quietly. I belong here. She didn't. He looked up at her. You ever think about whether you belong somewhere? All the time. And? I don't know yet, but I'm still trying to find out. He nodded slowly. That's honest, at least. After he left, Evelyn stood in the kitchen and thought about belonging, about whether she'd ever truly belonged anywhere. Not in Boston, not in her marriage, not in the life she'd thought was hers. Maybe belonging wasn't something you found. Maybe it was something you built, one hard day at a time. November deepened. The cold settled in for real. Frost covered the ground every morning. The men's breath made clouds when they came in for breakfast. Evelyn started making heartier meals, stews that simmered all day, thick soups, heavy breads, food to fight the cold and the hard work. And slowly, quietly, she realized she was happy. Not the kind of happiness she'd known in Boston, that had been soft and comfortable and ultimately hollow. This was different, harder, earned. She was happy when Dutch brought her fresh elk and taught her how to butcher it properly. Happy when Jimmy successfully made biscuits under her supervision and grinned like a kid. Happy when Tom played his harmonica and the men sang off-key but enthusiastic. Happy when Cole lingered after dinner and they talked about nothing and everything. She'd come to Iron Ridge to survive. But somewhere along the way, she'd started to live. The sky had been wrong all morning. Evelyn felt it before she saw it. A pressure in the air that made her neck ache and her skin prickle. She stood at the kitchen window while the coffee brewed, watching dark clouds pile up on the horizon like bruises. Tom came in for his usual early coffee, stamping mud off his boots. "Storm's coming," he said, confirming what she already knew. "Big one, by the look of it. Cole's bringing everyone in from the far pastures." "When?" "They'll start arriving around noon. Could be 40, maybe 45 men sheltering here until it passes." Evelyn turned from the window. "How long will it last?" "Hard to say. Could be a day, could be 3. He poured himself coffee, warming his hands on the cup. "These November storms don't mess around. We've lost cattle, lost buildings, lost men too, if they're caught out in it." She looked at her pantry supplies, doing rapid calculations. 3 days, 45 men, 3 meals a day. "I'll need extra flour," she said, "and more canned goods, anything that'll stretch. I'll have Ben bring up what we've got in the storehouse." Tom paused at the door. "You gonna be all right with this?" "I don't have much choice, do I?" He smiled grimly. "No, ma'am. None of us do." By mid-morning, the wind had picked up, rattling the windows and sending dust devils spinning across the yard. The first riders came in just before 11, Cole and 6 others, driving a small herd of cattle toward the shelter of the near corrals. Evelyn watched Cole dismount, saw the tension in his shoulders as he looked at the sky. He said something to the men, gestured toward the bunkhouse, then headed for the main house. He came through the kitchen door bringing cold air and urgency with him. "How many can you feed?" No greeting, no preamble. "As many as show up. We're going to have close to 50 by tonight. Maybe more if the Patterson crew makes it in from the East Range." "I'll manage." He studied her face. "This isn't going to be easy. These storms can get bad. Men get cabin fever fast when they're stuck inside. They'll get restless, mean, and if the storm's as bad as I think, we might lose power. Might lose the well pump. Then we'd better fill every bucket and barrel we've got right now." Something flickered in his eyes. Approval, maybe. "Already on it. I've got men hauling water. You need anything else, you tell me now. Extra firewood and lamps. If the power goes, I'll need light to cook by." "Done." He turned to go, then stopped. "Evelyn?" It was the first time he'd used her first name. She felt it like a physical touch. "Yeah? We're counting on you." Then he was gone, back out into the rising wind. She stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of those words. Then she tied her apron tighter and got to work. The next few hours were chaos. Men streamed in steadily, cold, wet, exhausted from riding hard ahead of the storm. They tracked mud everywhere, filled the bunkhouse and dining room to capacity. The noise was constant, boots, voices, the wind howling outside. Evelyn cooked without stopping. Soup, bread, biscuits, anything hot and fast and filling. Jimmy helped, and Dutch and a few others when they could spare the time. She turned the kitchen into a production line, everyone moving with purpose. By 3 o'clock, the storm hit for real. The wind went from strong to violent in minutes. Rain hammered the roof like bullets. Thunder shook the walls. Through the window, Evelyn could barely see 10 feet, just gray sheets of water and darkness. A crash from outside made everyone freeze. Then someone shouted, "Barn door's loose!" Cole was already moving. "Tom, Dutch, Frank, with me. Everyone else stays put." "You can't go out in that," one of the younger cowboys protested. Cole was already pulling on his rain slicker. "That door tears off, we lose the barn. We lose the barn. We lose the horses. We lose the horses, we're done." He looked at the room full of men. Stay inside, keep warm. We'll be back. Then he and 3 others were gone, swallowed by the storm. Evelyn's hand shook as she poured coffee for the remaining men. Through the window, she could see nothing but water and wind. Somewhere out there, Cole was trying to save his barn in conditions that could kill a man in minutes. He'll be all right, Jimmy said quietly beside her. He always is. How do you know? Because he's too stubborn to die. It felt like hours, but was probably 20 minutes before the door burst open and 4 soaked figures stumbled back inside. Cole's face was bleeding from a cut above his eye. Dutch was limping. Frank's arm hung at an odd angle. Evelyn was at Frank's side immediately. What happened? Beam fell, Frank said through gritted teeth. His face was white with pain. Caught my arm. She dealt with Sam's cut. This was different. This was serious. Get him to the table, she ordered. Jimmy, bring every lamp we've got. Someone get me clean towels and hot water. The men moved fast, clearing space. Frank sat heavily, cradling his arm. Even in the lamplight, Evelyn could see it was broken. A bad break, compound maybe, the bone pushing against skin. Cole appeared at her shoulder, water dripping from his hair. How bad? Bad. He needs a doctor. Can't get one. Not in this storm. Then he needs someone who knows what they're doing, and that's not me. You're what we've got. Cole's voice was flat, final. You stitched up Sam. You can do this. That was different. Evelyn. He caught her eyes, held them. You can do this. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she'd watched a doctor set a bone once, years ago, and barely remembered the process. Wanted to say she was terrified of hurting Frank worse, but Frank was looking at her with desperate trust, and the storm was screaming outside, and there was nobody else. All right, she heard herself say, but I need help. Jimmy, you're strongest. You'll hold him steady. Dutch, despite that limp, you're on his other side. And someone get me whiskey, a lot of it. They moved into position. Frank drank half a bottle of whiskey in long pulls, his Adam's apple bobbing. By the time she was ready, his eyes were glassy, but he was still conscious. This is going to hurt, Evelyn said. I know. I'm sorry. Just do it. She'd seen Dr. Mitchell set her husband's broken finger once, seen him pull the bone straight, felt the sound it made. She closed her eyes for a second, pulling up the memory, making it clear. Then she opened them and got to work. The bone had to be aligned before it could be splinted. That meant pulling. That meant Frank screaming despite the whiskey, despite Jimmy and Dutch holding him down. That meant Evelyn's hands slick with sweat, feeling for the right position, the right angle. When the bone clicked into place, Frank passed out. Is he? Jimmy started. He's fine. Better this way. Evelyn's voice was steady, even though her hands were shaking. She splinted the arm with slats from a broken crate, wrapped it tight with torn sheets, secured it all. When she finished, she sat back, breathing hard. Cole was still there, watching. Where'd you learn that? I didn't. I remembered someone doing it once. I hoped it was enough. It was enough. He looked at Frank's splinted arm. You might have saved his life. Infection from a badly set bone can kill a man. Evelyn didn't trust herself to speak. She just nodded. Dutch helped carry Frank to a bunk in the back room. The rest of the men had gone quiet, watching her with something like awe. Tom broke the silence. Well, guess we know who to come to when someone's dying. Nervous laughter rippled through the room. The tension broke. Men went back to their coffee and quiet conversations. Cole touched her elbow. Come here. She followed him to the kitchen. He sat heavily at the table, wincing. You're hurt too, she said. Just bruised ribs. I've had worse. Let me see. I'm fine. Cole, let me see. He hesitated, then unbuttoned his shirt. The bruising across his ribs was spectacular, deep purple spreading across his left side. You might have cracked ribs, Evelyn said, fingers gentle on the swollen area. Possibly broken. Can you fix it? No. You need to wrap them and rest. Can't rest. Got a ranch to run. You also need to breathe. Broken ribs can puncture a lung. He looked at her for a long moment, then sighed. All right, wrap them. She did, working carefully, acutely aware of the intimacy of touching him this way. His skin was warm under her fingers. She could feel him breathing, feel the tension in his muscles. Why'd you come out here? he asked suddenly. Wyoming? Iron Ridge. A woman like you could have found work in town. Boarding house, laundry, something easier than this. Evelyn tied off the bandage. Those jobs were all taken. This one wasn't. That's not the whole truth. She sat back. No, it's not. She was quiet for a moment. I was tired of being afraid, tired of barely surviving. I wanted to prove I could do something hard, something that mattered. You've proved it. Have I? You set a broken bone in the middle of a storm without flinching. Yeah, I'd say you've proved it. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Acknowledgement, respect, and something else she wasn't ready to name. Then the moment broke. Thunder crashed overhead, and the lights flickered. Storm's getting worse, Cole said, buttoning his shirt with difficulty. We should check on everyone. The next hours blurred together. The storm raged outside with terrifying intensity. Inside, the ranch house became a refuge. Evelyn kept the kitchen fires burning, kept coffee brewing, kept food coming. Soup, stew, bread, anything warm. The men huddled together in the dining room and bunkhouse, playing cards, telling stories, trying to wait out the weather. Every so often, someone would check the windows, report on the storm's progress. It wasn't getting better. Around midnight, the power finally went out. They'd been expecting it, but the sudden darkness still brought gasps. Everyone stay calm, Cole's voice cut through the darkness. We've got lamps. Just give us a minute. They lit every lamp and candle they had. The house glowed with warm, flickering light. It should have been cozy. Instead, it felt fragile, like they were holding back the darkness by force of will alone. Evelyn kept cooking. She could work by lamplight. Had done it before, would do it again. The stove stayed hot, fed by the woodpile that seemed to be shrinking too fast. Around 2 a.m, Dutch appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking grim. We got a problem. Jack Harrison's burning up with fever. Started shivering about an hour ago. Now he can't stop. Evelyn wiped her hands and followed him to the bunkhouse. Jack was a young cowboy, maybe 22, and he looked like death. His skin was gray, slick with sweat, and he was shaking so hard the bunk rattled. She pressed a hand to his forehead. He was on fire. How long has he been sick? He was coughing yesterday, one of the other men said, but he said it was nothing. It's not nothing now. She looked at Dutch. Get me cold water and clean cloths. And find Cole. By the time Cole arrived, she had Jack stripped to his undershirt and was sponging him down with cold water, trying to bring the fever down. What is it? Cole asked. Pneumonia, maybe. Or something worse. His lungs sound terrible. She looked up. He needs a doctor. Can't get one. I know, but I don't know what else to do for him. Cole knelt beside the bunk, looked at Jack's fevered face. What would a doctor do? Evelyn thought back to the winter her sister had gotten sick. Keep the fever down. Keep him hydrated. Keep him breathing. And hope. Then that's what we do. They set up a rotation. Evelyn, Jimmy, and Tom took turns with the cold compresses, forcing water between Jack's cracked lips, monitoring his breathing. The rest of the men gave them space but stayed close, watching their young friend fight for his life. Around 4 a.m, Jack started coughing, deep, rattling coughs that brought up blood. That's not good, Tom said quietly. No. Evelyn wrung out another cloth. It's not. Cole appeared with more water. How is he? Not better. They worked through the rest of the night. The storm continued to rage. The house creaked and groaned under the assault, and Jack Harrison fought for every breath. Dawn came gray and violent. The storm showed no signs of stopping. Evelyn had been awake for 24 hours straight, but she couldn't stop. Wouldn't stop. Jack's fever broke just after sunrise. 1 minute he was burning up, the next he was drenched in sweat and shivering, but his skin felt cooler. His breathing came easier. His eyes flickered open. What happened? He croaked. You got sick, Evelyn said, relief making her voice shake. But you're going to be all right. Around the bunkhouse, men who'd been watching in tense silence let out collective breaths. Someone laughed. Someone else clapped Jack on the shoulder, gentle. Tom pulled Evelyn aside. You did it again. He's not out of danger yet. But he's alive. That's because of you. She was too tired to argue. The storm finally broke that afternoon. The wind died. The rain stopped. Pale sunlight struggled through the clouds, turning the world into something exhausted and drained. The men ventured outside to assess the damage. A section of the barn roof had torn off. Two of the outbuildings had collapsed. The corrals were damaged. Debris was scattered everywhere. But the cattle had survived. The horses were safe, and everyone was alive. Cole found Evelyn in the kitchen, making yet another pot of coffee. She was running on fumes and stubbornness. "You need to rest," he said. "So do you." "I will, after I check the damage. After I make sure everyone's settled." He paused. "But you saved 2 men in 2 days. You kept 45 others fed and warm through the worst storm we've had in years. You turned this kitchen into a field hospital and never once complained." "I didn't do anything special." "Yes, you did, and everyone here knows it." He reached out, hesitated, then gently touched her face, just his fingertips against her cheek, there and gone. "Thank you." Before she could respond, he was gone. Evelyn stood alone in the kitchen, touching the spot where his fingers had been, feeling something crack open inside her chest. That evening, the men insisted she sit down for dinner instead of serving. They'd organized it themselves, Dutch and Jimmy cooking, Tom setting the table, others cleaning up afterward. The food was simple but edible, and Evelyn found herself laughing at their attempts to match her biscuits. "Close enough," she said generously. "Close enough nothing," Dutch grumbled. "These taste like rocks." "Your rocks," Jimmy pointed out. "You made them." The laughter felt good. Necessary, like breathing after being underwater too long. Later, after everyone had eaten and the kitchen was clean and the men had drifted off to check on the stock or sleep off the exhaustion, Evelyn sat on the porch and watched the sunset paint the storm-washed sky in shades of gold and purple. Cole sat down beside her without asking. They sat in silence, watching the light fade. "I was wrong about you," he finally said. "Wrong how?" "I thought you were just running from something, desperate enough to take any job, even one you couldn't handle." He looked at her. "But you're not running. You're fighting. There's a difference." "Sometimes it feels like the same thing." "It's not." He was quiet for a moment. "My wife ran from this place. Every day she was here, she was trying to escape it. You—" He shook his head. "You're different. You see how hard it is, and you dig in anyway." "I don't have anywhere else to go." "I don't think that's true anymore." She turned to look at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean you could leave tomorrow and find work anywhere. The men would give you references. Hell, I would. You've proved yourself 10 times over." He met her eyes. "But I don't think you want to leave." He was right. She didn't. Somewhere in the past 2 months, Iron Ridge had stopped being a last resort and started being something else. Home, maybe. Or the possibility of one. "I want to stay," she said quietly. "Then stay." 2 simple words, but they felt like a promise. That night, Evelyn lay in bed listening to the sounds of the ranch settling down for the night. Men talking low in the bunkhouse, horses moving in the barn. The wind, gentler now, rustling through the grass. She'd come here with nothing, a carpet bag and desperation. Now she had calloused hands and a stronger back. She had men who trusted her. She had skills she'd never known she possessed. And she had Cole Mercer looking at her like she was something valuable, something worth keeping. It wasn't the life she'd planned. It wasn't even the life she'd wanted. But lying there in the dark, listening to the ranch breathe around her, Evelyn realized it might be exactly the life she needed. The woman who'd arrived 2 months ago, broken, ashamed, running from her failures, was gone. In her place was someone harder, stronger, someone who could set bones in weather storms and hold a ranch together through sheer force of will. Someone who belonged. The week after the storm felt different. Evelyn noticed it first in small things. The way the men lingered after meals, talking easier, laughing louder. The way they started asking her opinion about things that had nothing to do with food, whether a horse looked lame, whether the weather would hold, whether Frank's arm was healing right. Most of all, she noticed it in Cole. He'd always been distant, guarded. Now he found reasons to be in the kitchen, checking supplies, asking about provisions, bringing her things she hadn't asked for, a new Dutch oven from town, a crate of apples, firewood already split and stacked. "You didn't have to do that," she said when he appeared with the firewood. "Needed doing anyway." "Still," he shrugged, uncomfortable with gratitude. "You kept us alive through that storm. Least I can do is make sure you don't freeze doing it. 3 days after the storm, Frank came into the kitchen with his arm still splinted but moving his fingers. Wanted to say thank you, he said awkwardly. Doc came out yesterday, said you did it perfect. Said most people would have botched it, and I'd have lost the arm. Evelyn felt something warm spread through her chest. I'm glad you're healing. Me too. He hesitated. My sister lives in Cheyenne. She's a seamstress. Makes real nice dresses. I wrote to her, told her what you did. She wants to send you something, as thanks. Frank, that's not necessary. It is to me. You saved my arm. Maybe my life. He met her eyes. Let her do this, please. So Evelyn nodded, and 2 weeks later a package arrived containing the most beautiful dress she'd seen in years. Deep green wool with black trim, practical but elegant. The kind of dress a woman could wear to town or to dinner or just to feel human again. She hung it in her small room and looked at it for a long time before she could bring herself to touch it. That Sunday, she wore it to breakfast. The reaction was immediate. Men who usually barely looked up from their plates stopped mid-bite. Dutch actually stood up. Well now, Tom said with a grin. Don't you clean up nice? Evelyn felt her face heat. It was a gift from Frank's sister. She's got good taste. Tom's grin widened. Don't she, Cole? Cole had gone very still. He was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. Something between surprise and something else. Something that made her pulse quicken. Yeah, he said finally, voice rough. She does. The moment stretched. Then Jimmy dropped his fork and the spell broke. Everyone going back to their breakfast like nothing had happened. But Evelyn felt Cole's eyes on her all through the meal. Later she was washing dishes when he appeared in the kitchen doorway. You busy tonight? He asked. When am I not busy? I mean, after supper. I was thinking. He stopped, looking uncomfortable. There's a harvest dance in town Saturday. Most of the men are going. I thought maybe you'd want to come too. Evelyn's hands stilled in the dishwater. Are you asking me to go with you? I'm asking if you want to go. I'm headed there anyway. Figured you could use a night away from this place. It wasn't exactly romantic, but it was the closest thing to an invitation she'd had in months. All right, she said. I'll go. Something shifted in his face. Relief, maybe. Good. We'll leave around 6. The week crawled by. Evelyn found herself looking forward to Saturday with an anticipation that felt almost foolish. It was just a dance, just an evening in town, nothing special. But she hadn't been to a social event since Richard died. Hadn't danced, hadn't laughed, hadn't done anything that didn't involve survival. Saturday came cold and clear. Evelyn finished supper early, cleaned the kitchen until it shone, then went to her room and changed into the green dress. She brushed out her hair, pinned it up, looked at herself in the small mirror. She barely recognized the woman looking back. The pale, desperate creature who'd arrived at Iron Ridge was gone. This woman had color in her cheeks, strength in her shoulders, purpose in her eyes. When she walked into the dining room, the men whistled and cheered. Save a dance for me, Mrs. Harper, Jimmy called out. You can't dance, Dutch said. I can too. You step on everyone's feet. That was one time, Evelyn laughed, feeling light for the first time in months. Then Cole appeared, and the laughter caught in her throat. He'd cleaned up too. Fresh shirt, vest, his hair still damp from washing. He looked different out of his work clothes. Younger, less burdened. Ready? He asked. Ready? They took the wagon into town, wrapped in coats against the evening chill. The silence between them was comfortable now, familiar. Evelyn watched the landscape roll by, the last of the sunset painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. You nervous? Cole asked. Should I be? Townfolk can be, judgmental. About women working on ranches. They might say things. Let them. Evelyn kept her eyes on the horizon. I stopped caring what people thought the day I left Boston. Good. He was quiet for a moment. But if anyone gives you trouble, you tell me. I can handle myself. I know, but tell me anyway. The dance was being held in the town hall, a simple wooden building decorated with fall leaves and lanterns. Music spilled out into the street, a fiddle, a piano, voices raised in song. People were already gathered, dressed in their best, laughing and talking. When Evelyn and Cole walked in together, conversations faltered, heads turned. She felt the weight of their stares, their speculation. The widow from Boston, the ranch cook, walking in with Cole Mercer, who hadn't been to a social event since his wife died. Cole's hand found the small of her back, steady and grounding. "Ignore them," he murmured. They found seats along the wall. Within minutes, Dutch and Tom and Jimmy arrived with the rest of the Iron Ridge crew, filling the hall with noise and energy. The awkwardness dissolved. The music started up again. Jimmy asked her to dance first. He wasn't lying. He really couldn't dance. He stepped on her feet twice and apologized so profusely she couldn't stop laughing. Dutch was next, surprisingly graceful for a big man. Then Tom, who spun her until she was dizzy. Between dances, women approached her. Some were curious, asking about ranch life with genuine interest. Others were cold, their questions edged with judgment. "Must be hard work cooking for all those men," one woman said, tone implying something unsavory. "It is," Evelyn agreed pleasantly, "but I'm good at it." Still, a woman alone, surrounded by all those cowboys. The woman's eyebrows rose meaningfully. "Those cowboys," Evelyn said, voice sharp now, "are the most decent men I've ever met. They work hard, they're respectful, and they've never treated me as anything but their cook. If you're implying otherwise, you can keep your implications to yourself." The woman's face went red. She turned and walked away. Beside her, an older woman with kind eyes laughed. "Good for you. Margaret's been a gossip since we were girls. Don't mind her." "I don't plan to. I'm Helen Patterson. I run the boarding house. If you ever need anything, a friendly ear, a place to stay, anything, you come find me." "Thank you." Helen squeezed her hand. "You're doing something brave, making your way out here. Don't let the Margarets of the world tell you different." Cole found her after that, appearing at her elbow with 2 cups of punch. "Having fun?" he asked. "More than I expected." "Good." He handed her a cup, then surprised her by asking, "Dance with me? I thought you didn't dance." "I don't. Usually." He set down his punch and offered his hand, "But I'm making an exception." The current song ended. The fiddler started something slower, sweeter. Evelyn let Cole lead her onto the floor. He danced like he did everything else, competently, without flourish. His hand was warm on her waist, his other hand holding hers with careful strength. They moved together, not gracefully, but not badly either. "I haven't done this in years," he said. "Me either." "You're better at it than I am." "That's not saying much." He smiled, actually smiled, a real one that reached his eyes. Fair point. Around them, other couples danced. Evelyn was aware of people watching, but she didn't care. For the first time in months, she felt like something other than a survivor. She felt like a woman, like herself. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For bringing me here. For giving me a chance at Iron Ridge. For—" She hesitated. "For seeing me as more than just desperate." Cole's hand tightened on her waist. "You were never just desperate. Even that first day, standing in the yard looking like the wind might blow you over, you had steel in you. I saw it then. I see it now." The song ended. They stood there in the middle of the dance floor, close enough that she could feel the heat of him, see the gold flecks in his eyes. "Cole, there you are." They stepped apart. A man Evelyn didn't recognize was approaching, tall, well-dressed, with an easy smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Marcus," Cole said, voice gone flat and hard. "Good to see you, brother." "Brother." Evelyn looked between them, seeing it now, the similar bone structure, the same build. But where Cole was weathered and honest, this man was polished and calculating. "Didn't know you were coming to town," Cole said. "Last-minute decision. Had some business to attend to." Marcus's gaze slid to Evelyn, assessing. "Aren't you going to introduce me?" "No." "Come now. Where are your manners?" Marcus extended his hand to Evelyn. "Marcus Mercer, Cole's older brother. And you are?" "Evelyn Harper." She shook his hand briefly, not liking the way he held on too long. "Ah, yes. The new cook. I've heard about you." "Have you?" "Small town. Word travels." His smile widened. "Though the word didn't mention how lovely you are." Cole moved between them, subtle but deliberate. We were just leaving. So soon? The night's young. Marcus's eyes stayed on Evelyn. I was hoping to get a dance with the lady who's apparently turned Iron Ridge into a home instead of a work camp. She's done dancing, Cole said. Is she? Marcus looked at her. What do you say, Mrs. Harper? Evelyn saw the tension in Cole's shoulders, the warning in his eyes. Whatever history existed between these brothers, it wasn't good. Mr. Mercer is right, she said. I'm tired. It's been a long week. Another time, then. Marcus tipped his hat, but his eyes were cold. I'm sure we'll see each other again. He walked away. Cole was rigid beside her. We're leaving, he said. They made their goodbyes quickly. On the ride back to the ranch, Cole was silent, his jaw tight. You want to talk about it? Evelyn finally asked. No. He's your brother. That doesn't make him family. She waited, giving him space. After a mile, he spoke again. Marcus is older by 3 years. My father left the ranch to both of us, 50-50. Marcus hated it here, same as my wife did. Wanted to sell, take the money, move to Denver. I refused. We fought about it for months. He paused. Then my father died, and the will specified the ranch couldn't be sold unless both of us agreed. Marcus has been trying to convince me to sell ever since. But you won't. This land is all I've got. All I've ever wanted. He knows that. Doesn't stop him from pushing. Cole's hands tightened on the reins. He offered to buy me out once, for half what the ranch is worth. When I said no, he tried to have me declared mentally unfit, said my wife's death had broken my mind. Evelyn drew in a sharp breath. It's Marcus. He doesn't see people. He sees obstacles and opportunities. He looked at her. Stay away from him. I mean it. I have no interest in your brother. Good. Because men like Marcus, they take what they want and justify it later. I don't want you anywhere near him. The protective edge in his voice made something warm bloom in her chest. They rode the rest of the way in silence. When they reached Iron Ridge, Cole helped her down from the wagon. His hands lingered on her waist. I'm sorry, he said. About tonight. About Marcus ruining it. He didn't ruin anything. I had a good time, a really good time. Yeah? Yeah. They stood there in the moonlight, close enough to touch. Evelyn thought he might kiss her. Wanted him to, she realized with a start. But Cole just stepped back, clearing his throat. Good night, Evelyn. Good night. She watched him walk away, feeling the loss of his warmth like a physical thing. The next few weeks settled into a new rhythm. The men finished repairs from the storm. Frank's arm healed. Jack recovered fully from his pneumonia. Winter crept closer, bringing shorter days and harder frosts. And Cole started courting her, though he never called it that. He brought her books from town, remembering she'd mentioned missing reading. He fixed the draft in her window without being asked. He started staying after supper, drinking coffee and talking about nothing and everything. The ranch's history, his plans for next year, his memories of his father. Evelyn found herself opening up too, telling him about Boston, about her marriage, about the slow realization that Richard had been lying to her for years. You loved him? Cole asked one evening. I thought I did. Now, I'm not sure I knew what love was. She stared into her coffee. We were compatible, appropriate, but there was no fire, no real partnership, just two people existing in the same space. That's lonely. It was. She looked at him, lonelier than being actually alone. He nodded slowly, understanding in his eyes. Yeah, I know that feeling. They were growing closer, and everyone could see it. The men started making excuses to leave them alone. Tom orchestrated situations that threw them together. Even Dutch, gruff and practical, started looking pleased when he caught them talking. But Cole didn't kiss her, didn't make any move beyond friendship, beyond respect. Evelyn told herself she didn't mind, told herself slow was good, that she needed time to figure out what she wanted. But lying in bed at night, she knew exactly what she wanted. She wanted Cole Mercer, his steadiness, his strength, his rare smiles that felt like gifts. She wanted this ranch, this life, these men who'd become something like family. She wanted to stop surviving and start living. It was mid-December when everything changed. Evelyn was in town picking up supplies when she saw Marcus Mercer coming out of the land office. He saw her at the same moment, and his face lit up with that practiced smile. Mrs. Harper, what a pleasant surprise. Mr. Mercer. She kept walking. He fell into step beside her. Please call me Marcus. After all, we're practically family. We're not family. Not yet, perhaps. He smiled. Though I have to wonder how long my brother will drag his feet before making you an honest woman. Evelyn stopped walking. Excuse me? Oh, come now. Everyone knows he's courting you. The question is whether he'll actually follow through or just string you along until you get tired of waiting. That's none of your business, isn't it? I'm his brother. I care about his future. And yours. Marcus moved closer, lowering his voice. Let me ask you something. Has Cole told you about his debts? What? The ranch is mortgaged to the hilt, has been for 2 years. He took out loans to expand, then the market collapsed and he couldn't pay them back. The bank's been patient, but that patience is running out. Evelyn's stomach went cold. You're lying. Am I? Ask him. Ask him how much longer Iron Ridge can last before the bank forecloses. Ask him what happens to you when that happens. Marcus's voice turned gentle, sympathetic. I'm not trying to hurt you, Mrs. Harper. I'm trying to prepare you. My brother is a proud man, but pride doesn't pay debts. When Iron Ridge goes under, and it will, what will you do? Get away from me. Think about it. That's all I ask. He tipped his hat and walked away. Evelyn stood on the street, shaking with anger and fear. She didn't believe Marcus, couldn't believe him, but doubt had taken root. That night after supper, she found Cole in the barn checking on the horses. Can I ask you something? She said. Of course. Is the ranch in trouble? His whole body went still. What? Financial trouble, debts. I need to know. Cole turned to face her slowly. Who told you that? So it's true. Evelyn, is it true? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Yeah, it's true. The confirmation hit her like a physical blow. How bad? Bad enough. I took out loans 2 years ago to buy more stock, expand the operation. Then beef prices dropped and I couldn't make the payments. I've been scraping by, but he ran a hand through his hair. But it's not sustainable. Why didn't you tell me? Because it's not your problem. It's mine. I work here. I live here. How is that not my problem? Because you've got enough to worry about without taking on my failures too. Evelyn felt something break inside her. Is that what I am to you? Someone too weak to handle the truth? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been lying to me, making me think I had a future here when you knew all along this place might not last. I'm trying to save it, Cole said, voice rising. I'm working every day to keep this ranch running, to keep everyone employed, to not lose the only thing I've got left. I'm sorry if I didn't share every detail of my financial troubles with you, but I was trying to protect you. I don't need protecting. I need honesty. Fine. You want honesty. Here it is. The ranch is in debt. I might lose it. And I didn't tell you because I was afraid you'd leave. He stopped, jaw working, and I couldn't handle losing someone else I care about. The words hung in the air between them. You care about me, Evelyn said quietly. Of course I care about you. How could I not? But you don't trust me. That's not fair, isn't it? You kept this from me for months. Let me build a life here without telling me it might all disappear. That's not trust, Cole. That's control. She turned and walked away before he could respond, her heart pounding, tears burning behind her eyes. That night she lay awake staring at the ceiling, trying to understand her own anger. She'd been lied to before. Richard had lied to her for years. But this felt different. This felt like betrayal from someone she'd started to trust, started to love. And that was the problem, wasn't it? She'd fallen in love with Cole Mercer, fallen in love with his quiet strength, his rare smiles, the way he saw her as capable instead of fragile. But love without trust was just another kind of loneliness. And Evelyn Harper had been lonely enough for one lifetime. The next 3 days were the longest of Evelyn's life. She cooked, she cleaned, she went through the motions with mechanical precision, but she and Cole didn't speak beyond what was absolutely necessary. Coffee's ready. Thanks. Supplies came in. I'll check them. The men noticed. Of course they noticed. The easy warmth that had filled the ranch house vanished, replaced by awkward tension. Meals were quieter. No one lingered after supper. Even Tom's harmonica stayed silent. On the fourth morning, Evelyn was kneading bread dough when Tom came into the kitchen and sat down at the table without asking. "You want to talk about it?" he said. "No?" "Well, I'm going to talk anyway." He poured himself coffee. "Cole's been holed up in his office for 3 days going through ledgers and bank statements. He's not sleeping, barely eating, and the rest of us are walking on eggshells wondering what the hell happened." Evelyn kept kneading, harder than necessary. "Ask him."
I did. He won't say. Just keeps muttering about debt and bad timing and being a fool. Tom paused.
"But I can guess. Marcus was in town last week, and you came back from town looking like someone had gut-punched you. So I'm thinking Marcus said something, and whatever it was, it put distance between you and Cole." She didn't confirm or deny it. Tom sighed. "Look, I don't know what he told you, but Marcus Mercer is a snake, always has been. If he told you something about this ranch, about Cole, I guarantee he twisted it to serve himself. He said the ranch is in debt, that Cole might lose it." "That part's true." Evelyn's hand stilled. "So you knew?" "We all knew. Cole didn't hide it from the men who work here. We knew what we were signing on for." Tom leaned forward. "But here's what Marcus probably didn't tell you. Cole took those loans to keep this place running after his wife died. The ranch was failing. She'd been sick for months, medical bills piled up, and Cole was so broken he could barely function. He took the loans to save Iron Ridge and to keep 30 men employed when most ranchers were laying people off. He said beef prices dropped. They did. But they're coming back up, slowly but steadily. Cole's been making payments when he can, working with the bank, fighting like hell to keep this place alive. And you know what? We're closer to breaking even than we've been in 2 years." Tom met her eyes. "Is it guaranteed?" "No." "Could the bank still foreclose?" "Yeah. But Cole's not giving up, and neither are we." Evelyn sank into a chair across from him. "Why didn't he tell me?" "Same reason he doesn't tell anyone about his ribs when they're cracked, or his hands when they're bleeding. Pride, stubbornness, that stupid idea men have that they need to carry everything alone." Tom's voice softened. "He cares about you, Mrs. Harper. More than he's cared about anyone since his wife died. Maybe that scared him. Maybe he thought if you knew about the debt, you'd leave, and he couldn't handle that." "I wouldn't have left, but he didn't know that. All he knew was that every other person who mattered to him either died or ran away from this place. Why would you be different?" The words hit hard because they were true. Cole had lost his father, his wife, his child. His own brother was trying to take the ranch. Everyone he'd loved had left him, one way or another. Of course he'd been afraid. "I was angry," Evelyn said quietly, "because Richard lied to me for years about money, about debt, and when he died, those lies nearly destroyed me. So when I found out Cole had kept this from me," she trailed off. "You thought it was the same thing." "Yes, but it's not, is it? Richard lied to protect himself. Cole kept quiet to protect you. There's a difference." Evelyn knew he was right, knew her anger had been fed by old wounds, old betrayals. Cole wasn't Richard. He'd never been Richard. "What do I do?" she asked. Tom smiled. "You already know. You're just scared to do it." He was right about that, too. After Tom left, Evelyn finished the bread and put it in to bake. Then she wiped her hands, took off her apron, and walked to Cole's office. The door was closed. She knocked. "Come in." Cole was at his desk, surrounded by papers and ledgers. He looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes, his jaw dark with stubble. When he saw her, he straightened slightly. "Evelyn, can we talk?" "Of course." He started gathering papers. "Let me just leave them. This won't take long." He went still, watching her with wary eyes. Evelyn closed the door behind her and sat in the chair across from his desk. For a moment, she just looked at him, this hard, stubborn man who'd given her a chance when no one else would. "I talked to Tom," she said. "Figured you might. He told me about the medical bills, about why you took the loans." Cole's jaw tightened. "Tom talks too much. He talks exactly the right amount." She leaned forward. "Cole, I was angry because my husband lied to me about money for years. When he died, I found out our entire life was built on debt and deception. I lost everything because he couldn't be honest with me. I know, and I should have told you. Let me finish.
She took a breath. I was wrong to compare you to Richard. You're nothing like him. He lied to protect himself. You kept quiet because you were trying to protect everyone else. That's different. It's still keeping secrets. It is. And I need you to understand that I can't build a life with someone who does that. Not again. She met his eyes. But I also understand why you did it. You've lost everyone you cared about. You were afraid I'd leave too. I was, he admitted quietly. I am. Well, I'm not leaving. Not because of debt or because the ranch might fail. I've survived worse than losing a job, Cole. What I can't survive is not knowing where I stand. With you, with this place, with everything. Cole stood up, came around the desk, and knelt in front of her chair. The gesture startled her, this proud man on his knees.
You want to know where you stand? He said. You're the best thing that's happened to this ranch in years. You're the reason the men work harder and fight less. You're the reason this place feels like a home instead of just a business. And you're... He stopped, swallowed hard. You're the reason I get up every morning and think maybe I can actually save this place. Because you make me believe things can get better. Evelyn felt tears sting her eyes. Cole, I'm not good at this. At talking about how I feel. Sarah used to say I was like a stone wall. He took her hands. But I need you to know that I see you. Not as my cook or my employee. As my partner. As someone I trust more than anyone. As someone I... He stopped again, struggling. As someone I love. The tears spilled over. You love me? Yeah, I do. I think I have for weeks now. I was just too scared to admit it. I love you too, she said, voice breaking. And I'm scared too. Of losing this. Of losing you. Of building something and watching it crumble. Then we'll be scared together. He squeezed her hands. But Evelyn, I swear to you, I will fight for this ranch with everything I have. And if I lose it anyway, if the bank forecloses and we have to start over, we'll start over, together. Whatever comes, we face it together. She pulled him up and kissed him. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was fierce and desperate and full of all the fear and hope and need she'd been holding back for months. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. So you're staying? He asked. I'm staying. Even if the ranch fails? Even then, we'll figure it out. He kissed her again, softer this time. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. That night at supper, the tension broke. Evelyn and Cole sat together, and when his hand found hers under the table, she didn't pull away. The men noticed and grinned at each other like conspirators. After the meal, Tom pulled out his harmonica and played, and Dutch sang in his terrible off-key voice, and Jimmy told ridiculous stories that made everyone laugh. It felt like family. Later, when everyone had gone to bed, Cole walked Evelyn to her door. Thank you, he said, for giving me another chance. Thank you for being worth it. He kissed her goodnight and walked away. Evelyn watched him go, feeling something settle deep in her chest. Not certainty. She'd learned the hard way that nothing was certain, but something better. Hope. The next week, Marcus showed up at the ranch unannounced. Evelyn was in the kitchen when she heard the commotion outside. Through the window, she saw Cole and Marcus facing off in the yard, both men tense. She dried her hands and walked out. Telling you one more time, Cole was saying, voice hard as iron. I'm not selling. Be reasonable. The bank's about to foreclose. You'll lose everything anyway. At least this way you walk away with something. I walk away with nothing. This ranch is my life. Marcus saw Evelyn approaching and his expression changed, became calculating. Ah, Mrs. Harper. Perhaps you can talk sense into my brother. Tell him that losing everything for pride is foolish. I think, Evelyn said calmly, that a man fighting for what he loves isn't foolish. It's brave. Brave or stupid, the result's the same. Maybe, but at least he'll know he tried. What will you know, Marcus? That you pressured your brother into giving up the one thing that matters to him, that you valued money over family? Marcus's face darkened. You know nothing about our family. I know enough. I know Cole's been fighting to save this place while you've been circling like a vulture, waiting for him to fail. She stepped closer to Cole, standing beside him. And I know he's not alone anymore. Whatever happens with this ranch, he's got people who believe in him, people who will stand with him. Touching, Marcus said coldly, but belief doesn't pay debts. No, Cole said, but hard work and determination do, and I've got both. He moved to stand slightly in front of Evelyn, protective. Get off my land, Marcus, and don't come back unless you're ready to actually be family instead of a vulture. Marcus looked between them, saw he'd lost, and forced a smile that held no warmth. You'll regret this. Probably, but it'll be my regret, not yours. After Marcus left, Cole turned to Evelyn. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Partners stand together, remember? He pulled her close, holding her tight. Partners, he agreed. December turned to January. The debt didn't disappear, but Cole met with the bank and negotiated a payment plan. Beef prices continued to rise. The ranch brought in enough to make the monthly payments with a little left over. It wasn't prosperity, but it was survival. And survival was something. During those winter months, Evelyn and Cole became inseparable. Not in any scandalous way. The ranch was too full of watchful eyes for that. But in the small ways that mattered. Morning coffee together before the men woke up. Evening walks after supper. Conversations that stretched late into the night about everything and nothing. The men approved. Dutch started calling them the boss and his lady, with obvious affection. Jimmy asked Cole when he was going to make it official. Even Tom, usually diplomatic, started making pointed comments about spring weddings. On Valentine's Day, Cole gave her a book, a collection of poetry she'd mentioned loving as a girl. Inside the cover, he'd written in careful script, "For Evelyn, who makes words unnecessary but life worth living, C." She cried when she read it. Too much? He asked, worried. Not enough, she said, and kissed him until they were both breathless. In March, Cole took her to town and bought her a ring. Nothing fancy, a simple gold band with a small diamond. But when he slipped it on her finger in front of the jeweler and half the town, she felt like the richest woman alive. They were married in April, in the ranch house with the men as witnesses. There was no fancy ceremony, no elaborate dress. Evelyn wore her green wool dress from Frank's sister. Cole wore his best shirt and vest. Tom officiated, using a book he'd borrowed from Helen Patterson. The vows were simple. I promise to stand by you, Cole said. In good times and bad, in debt and prosperity, for as long as we both live. I promise to trust you, Evelyn said. To build with you instead of just surviving. To make this ranch a home for as long as we both live. When Tom pronounced them married, the men cheered so loud, the chickens scattered. The celebration lasted all night. Dutch provided whiskey he'd been saving for a special occasion. Jimmy played fiddle while Tom sang. Someone roasted a pig. Frank, his arm fully healed, danced with every woman who'd come from town until he was too dizzy to stand. And Cole danced with his wife under the stars, holding her close, moving to music only they could hear. Happy? He asked. Terrified, she admitted. But happy? Is that normal? I think so. I'm terrified too. Of what? Losing this. Losing you. Waking up and finding out it was all a dream. She took his face in her hands. It's real, Cole. We're real. And whatever comes, debt, drought, Marcus, anything, we'll face it together. Together, he agreed. That summer, the ranch turned a profit for the first time in 3 years. Not much, but enough to make an extra payment on the debt and buy new stock. Cole started talking about expansion again, cautiously, and Evelyn helped him run the numbers. They worked side by side, her managing the household accounts and kitchen, him managing the livestock and land. They argued sometimes, both of them too stubborn to back down easily. But they always worked it out, always came back together. The ranch changed with them. Evelyn planted a garden behind the kitchen, growing vegetables that saved money and improved the meals. She taught Jimmy to cook properly, and he took over breakfast one day a week, giving her a morning to sleep in. She organized the household, hired a girl from town to help with laundry, made the ranch house feel less like a boarding house and more like a real home. Cole built her a reading nook in the parlor with a comfortable chair and good light. He brought her books from town every week. He made sure she had time for herself, time away from the constant demands of cooking and cleaning. And slowly, the debt shrank. Payment by payment, month by month, the weight lifted. In September, the bank manager came to the ranch. Evelyn's heart stopped when she saw him, fear rushing back. They'd missed a payment somewhere, made a mistake. It was all coming apart. But the manager was smiling. "Mr. Mercer, Mrs. Mercer," he said, shaking both their hands. "I wanted to deliver this news in person. As of this morning, your debt is paid in full. The ranch is yours, clear and free." Evelyn felt her knees go weak. Cole caught her, held her steady. "You're sure?" Cole asked, voice rough with emotion. "Quite sure. You've made every payment on time for 9 months. The final payment cleared this morning." The manager smiled wider. "Congratulations. I've seen a lot of men lose their ranches over the years. It's good to see one fight back and win." After he left, Evelyn and Cole stood in the yard, holding each other, both of them shaking. "We did it," she whispered. "We did it," he agreed. That night they gathered everyone in the dining room. When Cole announced the news, the men erupted in cheers. Dutch actually picked Evelyn up and spun her around. Tom played the most joyful tune his harmonica had ever produced. Jimmy cried openly, not ashamed. "This ranch is more than just mine now," Cole said when the celebration quieted. "It belongs to all of us. Everyone here has worked to save it, to build it, to make it something worth saving. So I want you all to know, as long as Iron Ridge stands, you've got a home here, a real home." The men raised their glasses in a toast, to the ranch, to the future, to family. Later, alone in their bedroom, the master bedroom now, which Evelyn had slowly transformed from a mausoleum of Cole's past into something bright and alive, she and Cole lay tangled together, talking in the dark. "You know what I realized today?" Evelyn said. "What?" "I came here with nothing, a carpet bag and desperation. I thought I was just trying to survive long enough to figure out my next move. And now? Now I have everything. A home, a family, a partner, a purpose." She turned to look at him in the moonlight. "I have a life, a real life. Not the one I planned in Boston, not the one I thought I wanted, but the one I actually needed." Cole pulled her closer. "I was drowning when you got here, barely holding on. I'd lost everything that mattered, and I was just existing, going through the motions." He kissed her forehead. "You saved me. You saved this place. You made me remember why I was fighting." "We saved each other," she corrected. "That's how partnerships work." "Yeah, I guess it is." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, secure in what they'd built. The years that followed weren't perfect. There were hard winters and dry summers and cattle that died and men who moved on. There were arguments and mistakes and moments when the future looked uncertain. But there was also laughter. There were Sunday dinners that stretched for hours, full of stories and music. There were new foals in spring and successful drives in fall. There were men who stayed and built lives on Iron Ridge land, some marrying and starting families of their own. There was Dutch teaching Evelyn to shoot, and her surprising everyone by becoming the best shot on the ranch. There was Jimmy opening his own small ranch on land Cole helped him buy. There was Frank bringing his sister to visit, and her falling in love with Tom. There was Marcus, eventually, coming back years later, humbled by his own failures, and Cole offering him a job as a ranch hand. Not a partner, not an equal, but a chance to earn back what he'd thrown away. Marcus took it, and over time, the brothers slowly rebuilt something that resembled family. There was Helen Patterson becoming Evelyn's closest friend, the two women meeting for coffee in town every month to talk about everything and nothing. There was the dress shop owner who'd been cold to Evelyn that first night, eventually apologizing and admitting she'd been wrong. There was the day, 5 years after Evelyn arrived, when she stood in the kitchen she'd transformed from battlefield to heart of the home and realized she couldn't remember what desperation felt like anymore. And there was Cole. Always Cole. Steady and strong and learning slowly to open up, to trust, to let himself be loved. One evening in their 7th year together, they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Evelyn was tucked against Cole's side, his arm around her shoulders. "You ever regret it?" he asked. "Leaving Boston? Coming here?" Evelyn thought about the woman she'd been. Broken, ashamed, running from her failures. Then she thought about the woman she was now, strong, capable, loved, and loving. Not once, she said. Best decision I ever made. Even when I was being stubborn and stupid about the debt? Even then. Because that led us here. To this. She gestured at the ranch spread out before them. The house with smoke rising from the chimney, the barn freshly painted, the corrals full of healthy horses, the men heading in for supper calling greetings to each other. A home. A real home. Not perfect, but real. You know what I learned out here, Evelyn said? That strength isn't about never breaking. It's about breaking and choosing to rebuild anyway. It's about facing fear and doing the hard thing because it matters. It's about finding people worth fighting for and fighting like hell to keep them. Cole kissed the top of her head. When'd you get so wise? When I started paying attention instead of just surviving. The dinner bell rang. Jimmy, calling everyone to eat. Evelyn had taught him well. He'd made the meal tonight, and whatever it would be good enough. Not perfect, but good enough. They stood up to go inside, and Cole caught her hand. Thank you, he said. For what? For staying, for choosing this, for choosing me. Thank you for giving me something worth choosing. They walked inside together, into the warm glow of lamplight and the sound of men's voices and the smell of dinner cooking. Into the life they'd built from nothing but stubbornness and hope. Evelyn Harper had come west to survive. But she'd done more than survive. She'd lived. She'd loved. She'd built something that would outlast her. Not just a ranch, but a legacy. A place where broken people could find themselves again. Where hard work was met with respect. Where family wasn't defined by blood, but by choice. She'd proven that even in the harshest lands, even when everything seemed lost, courage could rewrite destiny. And standing in that kitchen, surrounded by the men who'd become her family and the man who'd become her everything, Evelyn finally understood what home really meant. It wasn't a place you found. It was a place you built, one hard day at a time, with people who refused to give up on you even when you wanted to give up on yourself. It was messy and imperfect and sometimes broken, but it was hers, and that was enough.